Robert Redford was so good looking. Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. So can you give us kind of like your history in AI, maybe what that means and like how your career path kind of interacts with where we're at today in 2023?
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head first. Like artificial intelligence has been around as a function, as an area of study for over 50 years. So it's an extremely long history. Now, like you said, the advent of ChatGPT, kind of this seemingly cascading event of like, oh, it's here now, is less a function of new research in the area, but more in, you might have seen NVIDIA, the company that just, quadrupled in valuation, is a chip manufacturer, right? So it's really the compute power catching up to the math. Like the math has been there for, ever, but the ability for the computers to crunch large data sets, give outputs in a quick fashion that are actually usable in a business context, that's kind of what's new. So I'm not as bullish on, the alien or not alien, but the AI overlords taking over.
Right. Skynet's not real.
I don't think we're there because I've been in machine learning AI for over a decade now, and I started in LLMs, large language models, at IBM. So I was a part of IBM Watson back in the day, started as a product manager there, working on speech to text models. And it was about the time that Amazon Alexa, Google Home was starting to really take hold and getting a little bit better at recognizing speech, giving answers, crawling the web, doing these kinds of things. But it's always been there. But it's always historically been relegated to very domain-specific use cases, meaning if you're a mortgage loan officer, if you wanted to build a model to help you, we would feed it with data specific to your daily type of phone calls, whatever it is that would help you. So that way, when somebody calls you, Scott, to get help with something related to mortgages, it's going to be pretty damn accurate at telling you either what you need or recognizing the language, things like that. But it's just blown up. So now we can do much larger data sets because of the compute power, and it just looks like magic, but it is just math at the end of the day.
So this is kind of reminding me, I can't remember, I read an article on this years ago about how either a CT scan or an MRI, the concept was there like 50 or 60 years earlier. Yeah, you could shoot magnetic pulses through and you could get a cross-section with the body, but they didn't have computers that could turn that data into an image fast enough. It would take like 4 years to render a CT scan or an MRI. I can't remember which one it was. And then the person would already be dead of cancer. So it wasn't until the computing power caught up with the theory that, now all of a sudden we can look through the middle of your body with this machine. So it sounds kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good comparison. I think it is theory, the math, everything's been there, but now we have the compute power. Now we have the processing power to do it, A, and then to do it quickly, B. Now, the third part here is it's not done cheaply. Like the cost of compute power has gone down over the past few years. However, when you think about the money that OpenAI is just churning through to have all of these responses, continually train this LLM, it's probably insane, which obviously they're recouping some of that with their subscription plans, right? The $20 a month or however much you want to pay to be at the top of the queue so your prompts can get processed more quickly. But still, it is a resource intensive type of thing that's going on from a cost perspective. It's not just free. You don't just hit a button. There is something being processed on the back end that is costing a company or whoever's hosting it money.
Yeah. I want to come back to that because that's the part that scares me. But I just want to define two more terms. I'll pretend like it's for the audience, but it's really for me because I want to be able to have an intelligent conversation with this, and I don't want to get some of the base knowledge wrong. Can you explain two terms to me that I think get thrown around a lot? One is this large language model, and then the idea of machine learning. Because, like, of course you say machine learning, and I'm like, oh, the Terminator can adapt. Of course there's machine learning, right? That's everything. Yeah. Everything in this conversation, just so you know, we'll come back to Terminator 2. But
great movie.
Yeah, great movie. I would argue probably one of a handful, if not the only sequel that's significantly better than the original, but we'll have that argument at the end of the podcast. So can you define for me what a large language model is and what machine learning is and isn't? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I just put in some zeros and ones and the machine will teach itself. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's a little bit more advanced than that. So can you tell me what those two terms mean?
So I did my master's degree in statistics, so I'll try to keep a little like less dorky, but machine learning could be anything from just a simple linear regression model, like just something that is math, where you have multiple inputs and you get a desired output, right? That's machine learning. You are just training some model to do some function for you. So that could be something as simple as crunching numbers, like taking someone's FICO credit score, taking a couple other, like their income level, mashing that up in it could be an Excel spreadsheet if you wanted to, and ultimately giving either a credit worthiness score or a potential look at me, I'm drawing a blank.
Like an underwriting decision. Because we have something similar called desktop underwriting, where it does exactly that. It takes the credit score, the length of the accounts, the income, how long you've been at the job, what's your down payment, and we kind of know, as a loan originator, we kind of know when it's going to spit out an approval and when it's going to spit out a decline. But sometimes you're just like, wait a minute, this person's putting 10% down. They have $100,000 in post-closing reserves and assets, but it doesn't like these 2 late car payments they had a year ago. So somehow it's spitting out a rejection or a denial. So that's kind of machine learning. There's like all these inputs, and then DU, desktop underwriter, is saying approve or no go.
Yep. So essentially inputs with an output, and that could span a bunch of different modeling types, from something like you just mentioned to something really complex where you use a model that crunches that data in a certain way to give an output or a precision score or a predictability score, anything like that. So that's kind of machine learning writ large, right? Now, large language models, LLMs, is just a specific type of modeling technique. It still falls under that umbrella of machine learning. So you're taking a giant corpus of data. And when I used to do language models at IBM, it would be for specific customers. So they might have, for instance, your podcast. You have all this video, all this audio, and you probably have transcripts for each episode, right? So the language model we might build for your podcast would be trained on all of the data from your previous podcast. That way we could have a better understanding with that language model of how Scott likes to talk. Because if we were going to then, have somebody have a little UI where they could type in a prompt of, give me all the podcasts where Scott talks about, double V cutting cigars, it would pull it up very easily, things like that. But yeah, that's kind of the best high level between machine learning, which is math and models writ large, and LLMs, which is a specific subset of that trained on specific data sources. And ChatGPT is just an example of that being trained on an even larger, more broad corpus of data.
Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Okay. This brings up so many questions. All right. So you're 68 miles from a paved road that gets, snowed in, landslide in. What the fuck does your house look like? Do you have a year's worth of like water, food, ammo, kerosene? Like, are you constantly bringing a flatbed back into civilization for stuff, or like is it old school living off the land? Like, describe your setup.
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. There's backup systems to backup systems. So we actually live quite modern for where we're at. Again, where my house is situated, it's a little 2-story cabin, and you open up the French doors in my backyard, it opens up to 3,000 acres of national forest land. The first bear I shot with my bow, I shot in my underwear off my back deck when it was kind of breaking into our house.
Wait, can you say that one more time?
No, you heard. It was not a misspeak.
Your first bear that you shot, so there's been multiple bears now. The first bear you shot in your underwear from your porch because he was trying to break into your house.
Yeah, and my wife was holding our 3-week-old baby at the time. So it was...
Dude, this is some like Alaska frontier mountain man shit. You're like, you're way more of a man than I will ever be.
There's no Google
I don't know about
Street
all that.
View.
I mean,
there's no what?
There's no Google Street View.
There's no Google. He's trying to find you. Google Street View has not made their way out there. You are off the grid officially.
Yeah, so Atlanta, Idaho. You'll see it. It's at the base right there. There's not many homes there.
There's a restaurant called Beaver Lodge.
Yeah, there is the Beaver Lodge. So, it's open depending on time of year, usually like Tuesday to Saturday. But you can get a nice just burger, French fries, very basic fare, but you can get booze. So that's kind of nice.
Cool. That's nice.
But yeah, so our setup, multiple redundancies, just given where we're at, because oftentimes we're snowed in. We have a road crew there. There's 2 guys that run our road crew. I was actually an elected official in the state of Idaho. I was the chairman of our rural highway district.
Nice.
So we have really good guys. Actually, we have a trust where we have a loader, all sorts of stuff, a road grader where we can get down and clear stuff if we have to. Like, I'll send a photo afterwards, but you might have seen it in one of the signal groups we're in, but we had a huge avalanche that went from the opposite side of the river and blocked the road for 5 days before we could cut through.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, the snow was like legit 17 feet high or something, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're getting through that with a 4-wheeler.
No, not at all. Not even with a snowmobile. They're just full ponderosa pines stuck in all weird angles, in a tomb of ice. But the house itself, right? We have 2 500-gallon propane tanks, which again, if shit hit the fan, the propane company is not going to drive propane up, which they do about twice a year, come and fill up when the roads are passable, which is nice. So we have propane gas stove. I have a redundant propane fireplace in the house if we need to, and a few wall heaters in like my daughter's room and other places that we don't want to do wood burning all the time.
Right.
Our main sources of heat, we have 2 wood burning stoves, one downstairs, one upstairs. The one downstairs is in my fur shed workshop, and I have no insulation above it, so it can kind of rise the heat and heat the upstairs a little bit, which means I have to cut 5-6 cords of wood to fill our wood shed every summer, which we're already starting to work on now because we go through so much. But we have pine, Douglas fir, a lot of different wood up there that we can get access to.
And so wait, okay, so you get divorced, however that ended. How in this short period of time do you find a new wife who has 2 young kids who you convince to live in the middle of nowhere? Because my wife,
I never said she had good character judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife's game for a lot of stuff. If I tried to pull this on her, it was hard enough getting her to buy a second home in Vegas 4 hours from her mom. If I was like, we're going to live off a dirt road 60 miles, she'd be like, dude, you can't fix shit. What are you thinking?
Thankfully, my now wife didn't know that I couldn't fix shit at the time. And there was some sort of, primer there where she kind of thought I was probably a little more hands-on than I actually am. But it was interesting. So when I was in Boise, this happened ridiculously fast post-divorce. I started trying dating apps. The dating apps were well after my first marriage.
Right.
So never tried it. But when I came up to Boise, this was 2 months before the pandemic hit. So I was trying these different dating apps, some success, some not, just playing around, just getting back in the game, I guess. And then I met my now wife on like March 15th, 2020. And literally we went on our first date. She came over and I made some food. And a week later, everything was shut down. Nobody was dating. Nobody was doing anything. And by like almost force and function, we were like, well, I guess we can hang out because we've already been exposed to each other. And we did. And this was right a week after I'd bought that cabin. So I said, do you want to drive up a 4.5-hour dirt road with me to a town you've never heard of with no cell phone service and spend the weekend? And
she was like, yeah, sure, Ted Kaczynski, or serial killer,
exactly.
Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, that's creepy.
That's how I felt. I was like, wow, this, I even felt weird asking, but she did. She was down for the ride, but she was a mountain girl. Like, she's a girl who would do 15-day backpacking trips all over different mountain ranges. So she was outdoorsy. And
so she's the real tough one in the family. You're the keyboard warrior, and she's actually the one. Tell us the truth. She's the one that killed the bear.
I'll tell you the truth. She's the one at the cabin right now with 2 young kids and 2 big dogs holding down the fort. So yes.
Yeah, she's the tough one. Answer. That's awesome.
But so she's gangster by all accounts as far as an outdoor woman goes.
So what's been the biggest financial shock of moving out to the middle of nowhere of like, oh my God, we've got to pay for this that I wasn't thinking of, or we've got to, I dropped $15,000 on this redundancy system. And then what's the thing where it's like, oh man, I used to spend so much money on that and now I don't even think about it. Like where's been the money trade-off? And then I want to ask some questions about the lifestyle trade-off.
Yeah, the money trade-off's been interesting because, going out there, my mortgage was low, right? There weren't many people. I was surprised I was able to get a traditional loan for where I was at, but I was. Great when, the interest rates were way better than they are now.
Right.
And so that was nice. So step one, mortgage payment drops down from where we were at in, Louisiana. But everything is expensive. And what I mean by everything is expensive, and, I know some of the signal groups you're a part of too, talking about preparedness, is redundant systems, generators, solar, livestock, feed for livestock, everything adds up. Like to live an off-grid lifestyle, and I would say we're probably in that pseudo off-grid. Again, we have a group co-op, we have redundancies, but everything's just expensive. And I can't think of one thing that was extremely expensive other than getting my house rewired to take a tri-fuel generator that had an auto failover, a couple grand. But it was just like the things you need to do the stuff you want to do. Like, okay, here's a $10,000 snowmobile to go trap line all winter so you can go trap wolves. Here's a UTV so you can go bait barrels.
Wait, go back to the trapping wolves. Is this to eat? Is this to keep them off your land from eating your sheep? Or what the fuck are you trapping wolves for?
So interestingly enough, I actually get paid to trap wolves. So the Foundation for Wildlife Management is a group based in Idaho and Montana who are actively working to not cull, but reduce the number of wolves because of the elk, deer, and other ungulate populations in Idaho. Wolves are a reintroduced species. They have boomed. Like right where I live, we have 5 packs that run around, and you will see elk kill, deer kill all winter along the road, and they just decimate the population. And they're growing because, there's not really many people actively going and reducing the numbers. So trappers specifically, you can get paid up to like $1,000 or $2,000 per wolf you take, depending on what region you're in, which is something that I actively do every winter.
So it's like supplemental income to hunt down the wolves to control the population so that the deer and the elk don't get wiped out, which will then, of course, kill all the wolves because they have nothing left to eat.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think the goal is to kill up all the wolves, but, just have a manageable
keep
number.
them manageable. That's what I'm saying. This is something that This is something that pisses me off about the media and just our general political malaise right now. I hear that, and because I know enough about people that hunt, I've hunted a couple times in my life. I'm not a hunter, but I know enough, and I'm very close with my uncle who hunts religiously 3-4 times a year, that like this is part of the ecosystem that we've screwed up as humans and introduced species into the wrong places, where now we have to step in and solve the problem, right? So it's like wolves got reintroduced inappropriately. I think wasn't that in Yellowstone or something? They reintroduced them and then it like decimated the elk and the deer population or something. So then we had to go in and fix that and fix that. It just goes on and on and on. And so if somebody just heard you, oh, Zachary just kills wolves for money, it's like, well, yes, that's a cool way to supplement your income. And it's absolutely necessary if we want deer and elk and caribou and all that stuff. Well, I don't know if you have caribou in Idaho, but all of that stuff to continue to thrive. It's just part of like adjusting the ecosystem that we've kind of tampered with. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment. And like, that's the battle going on in Colorado because they're trying to reintroduce them. And I think they reintroduced a few. And in the region that they introduced them, there's already been multiple, pet fatalities. And now, the people who wanted to reintroduce them are like, well, now they're eating Fluffy. Like, I don't want that. I want the pretty wolves to stare at and take a picture out of my car, but I don't want, my Anna or my pet to be eaten. And that's where this whole balance thing comes in, is like, as we grow as a race and we're expanding, like we take over habitat, and, you can talk about whether that's right or wrong, and there's habitat protection. That's great. But, there's only so much carrying capacity for these animals. And that's what's interesting. Same with grizzly bears. You introduce them into Yellowstone, they don't know the boundaries.
Right.
It is completely likely that, Yellowstone pack leaves, goes up in Idaho or down into Wyoming. Same with the grizzly. And there's instances of that slowly coming about where they're just spreading. And, sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. But in the case of wolves, and specifically where we're at, it's a really big impact on the ungulate population.
Have you heard of this? I can't remember exactly how it happened, but either it's getting warm enough that like the timber wolves of Colorado are coming down into Oregon and crossbreeding with the coyotes. So I guess from what I've read, wolves are pretty dumb, but they're apex predators, and coyotes are pretty weak, but they're super, super brilliant, which is how they like snake, chickens out of your fully enclosed coop. But now they're crossbreeding where you're getting these super coyotes that are more like alpha apex predators like the wolves, but they're super bright like coyotes. And I think they're showing up over like northern Oregon or something. Have you heard about this? This is like some super predator.
I haven't heard about that, but I do want to correct you on one thing. Wolves are not dumb.
Okay.
I am just the worst trapper in the world, but like both coyotes and wolves, and this is the other thing where there's a misconception around trapping, I think, where people say, oh, you just indiscriminately put this piece of steel out in the woods. Damn, it's hard. Trapping is the hardest thing. I invite anybody who thinks that trapping is just indiscriminate, easy, to come out with me, because you have to go through this process of descenting everything. You're carrying hundreds of pounds of chain and traps many, many miles into some of the most remote, rugged country in the world. And you're expecting, the way I like to say, if you have a trap, that's, 6 inches by 6 inches, if you're trapping in 3,000 acres of national forest land, you're expecting a really intelligent canine to put their paw on a 6-inch square piece of metal in that vast wilderness. Good luck.
I've seen the movie, Zachary. You just put like a lasso thing on the ground and it like whips them up into the tree. Isn't this how everybody falls for it in every movie? It's super easy. Super easy.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I'm doing it wrong. I need the Scott training on that.
You got to watch the Wile E. Coyote training on that, man.
I know. I got to kick out my Acme Dynamite. But it's hard is the point. And you're right on the regulation, but wolves are intensely smart. Coyotes are also intensely smart. Like, to do good trapping is hard. But I don't want to hear about a coyote wolf hybrid, because like I'm already outsmarted by both of those. So, I can kiss any opportunity to take a wolf coyote hybrid out of the picture if they're smarter and faster. And more intellectual.
It's a whole thing. They're called coy wolves.
Coy wolves. There we go. Yeah, we're gonna have to link to that in the description for anybody who's a nerd and wants to read about hybrid animals. What is it? A liger? Is that the lion tiger? Tell us about this bear encounter. Like, what's going on in your house? Like, when you think about living way the hell out of nowhere, all these considerations are coming to my head. Like, what do you do with your sewage waste? What do you do with your trash? Obviously, there's not a recycling truck pulling up to your house every week. Do you burn? Just like so many questions. So maybe we start with the bear. Did they smell you cooking some venison, or did you not cover your trash correctly? Like, why is the bear moping around your house there?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, when I shot this bear with my bow, my wife was holding our 2 or 3 week.
Wait, when there's a bear by your house, you don't grab the gun, you go with the bow?
Oh yeah. I've never taken an animal with a rifle. I've only bow hunted.
All right, for the record, I'm just putting this out there. Any animal comes close to my house, I'm grabbing like the AR-10. I have no confidence in myself with a bow. So good for you, because I would grab the machine gun theoretically. And yeah, I want to be okay. So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Bow for the bear.
I'm getting more comfortable with my firearms and, the whole suppressor bit. I've got the whole lot now. So we got a whole armament and, choice. But if it's bum rushing me, I might switch. But anyways, the story goes, I did not lock up our trash. And this was our first winter up there, or I guess this was spring. So our first May up there after my daughter was born. I wasn't really as aware of how close and how many bears we have up there, which is a lot. And I woke up one morning and I look out back and I see something kind of in the woods. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I kind of get out and I go in and I investigate and I look around and I see just trash strewn everywhere. And specifically my infant's diapers all over the place.
Oh.
So this bear had sniffed out, dirty diapers in the trash that I had not appropriately secured, ripped into it and spread it everywhere. So I was around picking that up, everything like that. So we knew there was a bear around. There was a paw print on the door going into our downstairs, just a muddy bear print.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I think I got a picture of the bear print somewhere, but it was trying to get into the house. And that was one morning. Fast forward, we go to bed and I had my bow kind of hanging by our bedside, and we have these French doors again that open to the backyard. Our infant was in the crib. Just at first light, my wife starts elbowing me. She's like, Zach, I hear something outside. And my wife doesn't cuss. She's a wonderful woman, doesn't cuss. But we kind of go over and we start to creep open the blinds. And sure enough, 35 yards out in the yard, this big brown color, it's not a grizzly bear, but it's a brown colored black bear is just sniffing around. And my wife goes, Zach, it's a bear. It's a fucking bear. And, when my wife says that, it's like,
it's serious.
Okay. Yeah, we're on. So I grabbed my bow and I said, go grab the baby. So when I open the door, it doesn't, cry or anything, or try to keep it as quiet as you can. And I did that. I opened the door. I snuck out onto our little patio right there, and in the dark, in my underwear, I drew my bow back, and it was set at 35 yards, and I just ripped it right broadside and took it out.
And what happens if the bear comes charging at you because you kind of give it a grazing shot?
Well, training, Scott. But I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. TBD, I guess.
Hopefully you had another arrow ready to be notched or something?
I like to think that I would have been able to appropriately handle the situation, but the reality is I probably would have gotten mauled and eaten butthole force by a bear in front of my wife and child.
Yeah.
But it worked out in this specific scenario.
So do you have a butcher in town? I mean, you only got 35 people. I imagine somebody's got to be cross-trained on gutting a bear if you've never done it before, or did you just go out there and figure it out?
Well, two things with this bear in particular. One, it was broadside, and when I let my arrow go, it heard the string and it kind of turned towards me. So it went in right behind the shoulder, or clipped the shoulder. So when I went over there, I found my arrow was broken in half. So I found the broadhead with good blood on it, and that bear had taken off. Now, one of the weird things about bear is you killed them because they have the most sad, depressing death moan. Like it's just like this guttural, like you can just feel the life go out of them. We never heard it. So I start to follow the blood pretty quickly afterwards. Now, mind you, I'm colorblind as a dog, which is not very good when you're trying to track red blood on green grass.
Yeah.
So I'm following the globules, and bear don't bleed a lot. They're very fatty animals. So I'm following the blood, and I get down in this little ravine that then opens up to just this huge mass amount of buckbrush and land, and I lose the blood. So I do what any good husband would do and go get my appropriately color visioned wife and my newborn strapped in, and we go out and I get her to help me track the blood. And she can't find it afterwards either, like where it ended. And I was so depressed. I'm like, what is going to happen? And then as soon as I was like saying I'm depressed, it started to rain. All the blood washed away. So now I'm thinking I had to have wounded this bear. I have no idea how far it ran. It could be miles away, but I can't not try to figure out this bear. So we're sitting there. I'm feeling bad or sorry for myself. And then we hear a moan. And we hear that death moan on that hill somewhere up there. So I spent the next 12 hours up and down this vertical slope, just trying to kick over this bear and don't find it. And thankfully it was a cool night. So hopefully the meat wasn't going to spoil. But I went back the next morning and I went right to the spot where we lost blood. And I said, it had to have taken the like path of least resistance. And I walked through this really dense stuff and I kicked over the bear in like 200 yards. It was there the whole time, just kind of in this little knoll, like a natural depression in the ground, kind of covered up by brush where it went and died. But then to answer your question, I had done enough hunting by that point and had done enough YouTube, research to be able to skin it out myself. And I did the whole thing. I tanned the whole bear, taxidermied it, the whole lot. So boned out the knuckles, took out the skull. My wife and I sat there and scraped fat off of it for 4 days before we salted it. And then we did the whole pickling bath and we stretched it and panned it. And now it's on our wall.
Whoa. So, oh God, so many questions. How vulnerable are you, because animals have amazing sense of smell. How vulnerable are you when you're out there in the middle of a field dressing a bear so you can at least get the hide back and do all that stuff, the fat scraping and all that stuff? How vulnerable are you to other bears, to wolves, to other predators coming along and wanting a free meal, and you're just sitting there with blood covered head to toe in blood and fat?
Yeah, I don't think much. Like going back to the introduction of grizzlies and stuff, like we don't have grizzlies in our area, but again, there's been unreported sightings and there's nothing to say a grizzly from another part of Idaho can't come over. But I think just the smell of human, it's pretty a natural deterrent. Like a bear smells a human, they're going to run away. Like they have a really intense sense of smell. So it's very hard to sneak up on a bear and, maybe a mountain lion, which we have up there, but also kind of opportunistic. This was, middle of the day. I don't feel like we're at great peril. Like where I went elk hunting this past year up in West Yellowstone, where we saw grizzly, I never felt comfortable.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. What's been the biggest aha moment, good, bad, indifferent, of living up there? Like, has it made you closer? Well, I guess you don't really know because you met your wife right after you bought it, but is there been a big aha moment? Like, yeah, this is what I was looking for, or this is something I didn't expect? Or conversely, are you, oh man, sunk cost fallacy? I wish I wouldn't have done this. This is not for me. Like, where are you at in kind of your headspace?
Well, 100% not on the whole sunk cost. Like it's the perfect thing for us. And like now that we've found kind of the balance, it's even better. The thing that I think for us has just been amazing is the ability to unplug while we're up there. Like I said, like we do have Starlink. So, if my daughter wants to watch Coco Melon or if my wife and I want to watch Netflix on the iPad, we can. Like we don't have a TV or anything, but and again, we don't have much to compare it to because we kind of started it there. I mean, I had my ex-wife, we didn't have kids, but just the aspect of having to do everything, and even like our 2-year-old helps out with stuff. I think just that aspect of like, this is a communal thing for us to continue living up here, meaning like, if my wife sees the dumbwaiter full of woods out, she's going to go take an axe and chop more wood, or vice versa. And my little daughter will help pick up the pieces, and she knows to put them in the little dumbwaiter and take them up. She knows how to, open it and look in the fire. And, I think just that aspect of kind of that, dare I say, like traditional, like tribalism and community, even just within our nuclear family. And then you expand that out to the 38 people who live there. It's great. I think that's been the most beneficial thing for us. And when I don't want to talk to somebody, I walk 40 feet out of my house and I don't have to talk to anybody. It's amazing. I can't talk to anybody is a better way to.
And have you put down some jiu-jitsu mats so you and your neighbor can practice?
So we're talking about doing the Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu school. So I might take some other people's ideas in our group to do like a Connex full of mats. But yeah, I think we're going to have an outpost out there, which would be awesome for training camps, because it's a amazing place to go out, camp, and have just a big community of jiu-jitsu guys out in the middle of the woods. And then worst case, we can go like wrestle a bear or a wolf or something like that.
Yeah, hard pass on that. But yeah, I will come to your inaugural Atlanta Idaho jiu-jitsu camp, because I've only been doing it for 3 years. I wrestled a little bit in high school. I was a average or below average wrestler on like a state championship team, so I basically just got my ass kicked for 2 years because I started late. And then
counts.
What's that?
That counts, though.
That counts. Yeah. I got the Iron Man award for being at every practice and just getting my ass beat. And then about 3 years ago, after I decided boxing, probably not a good idea when you're 40, like don't need any more brain damage, I switched over to jiu-jitsu, and I absolutely loved it. I've been to a bunch of camps, and I try to get in 4 or 5 sessions a week, and just totally in love with it. Like that would actually be a consideration for me if we were going to move out to the middle of nowhere, of like, well, who am I going to continue this practice with? Because like I don't want to give it up.
Yeah, and that was hard, honestly, because like coming out of my divorce, like I said, we were a jiu-jitsu family. Yeah. Like we were at a check mat, gym with lots of great black belts. Like it was just nonstop, 6-7 days a week, private lessons, 2-a-days, the whole lot, competing all over, like going to the Paris IBJJF Open,
wow,
the world, everywhere. We were just training and competing. And then,
are you pretty good?
No.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the grands, I was a below average wrestler too. Like I'm one of those gym guys. Like I'm a pretty good guy in the gym. I'm not a really good competitor.
Got it.
I don't know what the switch is for me. Like I'm too relaxed going in, and all of a sudden the guy's 4 points up on me, and I'm like, oh, shit.
I had that exact same experience at Naga a couple months ago, where I was just like, yeah, this is fine. Like I've boxed, I've wrestled, I've done a couple of jiu-jitsu tournaments, and then I just got like double leg blasted by all 3 guys, and then they just sat on top of me for 5 minutes, and I couldn't get away. And I'm like, cool, lost 2-0, got submitted. That was fun for the kids to see.
Yeah. No, I've got the same track record. It seems like it's I don't get nervous for a lot of things. Like I don't have like the anxiety in competing because I wrestled so much. But I'm like just too relaxed. And then like I'm older, so I don't really care. Like I don't want to be a world champion. So it adds up. But no, I'm not that great. And I don't know where we're going that other than I suck at jiu-jitsu.